Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second webinar progress report for the NSCF. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Next slide, please. So just to give you some background guidelines for engagement. So we do welcome everybody to the webinar and ask you to use the chat to say hello, let us know where you're from, to keep contributions helpful and considerate of the host and other participants. So use the chat box or use the question and answer box. If you've got questions through the presentations, you're welcome to post those in the Q&A box. And we'll try and answer as we go along. Otherwise, we'll also look at the questions at the end of the presentations. So keep your questions coming through all the time. We'll either answer during the presentation or afterwards. If we don't have time for all of them, we'll make a plan to get answers afterwards. All right, next slide, please. So quite a few of you will have joined us in July when we had our first webinar and first update of the NSCF work. That's 3 months ago. Time has just flown. I checked, we're now on day 223 of the lockdown, and we have moved to level 1. So there've been lots of changes since July. I know that most of you are back in your offices, even if it's just for some days of the week, people working on a rotational basis. For the NSCF Hub team, some of us are still working from home. I'm still at home, and some people are rotating days in the office. Our challenge for the NSCF Hub team is space, one of our big challenges. I don't know if some of you will remember, 4 years ago, we were talking about this amazing new building for the NSCF to be based at the Pretoria National Botanical Gardens. It's got tied up in a whole lot of EIA and municipal authorizations, and we just don't know when we'll Oh, okay. All right. So despite the stay connected, even if we are scattered. Also been considering how the different committees that we've got and we're going to have to now look at a virtual forum. So there's been lots of thinking and discussing and talking. Next slide, please.
there it goes.
Thanks, Don. Okay, so part of the discussions that we've been having are to look at how do we deal with our big challenges as the NSCF and the NSCF Hub. And we've gone back to different governance structures, different levels of resourcing. And so how do you get those institutions to all work together, people to work together, to work towards all the discussing, all the reflection on how we've been doing things. But we don't have endless time, unfortunately, for this. Our big challenges, we were at a meeting with the Department of Science and Innovation, who are the funders, just a few weeks ago, and they said that they are going to be assessing and reviewing all the big projects that have been going for 5 years next year. And one of those is the NSCF, so they will be doing a review. And we have to understand that after 5 years, next year it will be 5 years, and 60 million rand spent, what will we be able to show them? So we have to be mindful of what we actually need to achieve. We have records for things like climate and pests for the storerooms. That if they go and look at the collections, the assessors will see that they're well organized and they look professional, like a scientific research infrastructure. The second point is making the collections and data accessible. So we've seen what's happened. Chanel will about projects that have been done using the collections and how these solved real problems. The iconic specimens, we need to touch the hearts of the public, of decision makers, by these amazing specimens that we look after for the country and for the world. Next slide. So those are things that I think we're under massive pressure to deliver on. And we will be focusing on them and working with many of you at the institutions. But some of the things that we also have to consider and keep in our mind is that we have to do training and support for the curation and collection management, implementation of the manual. So we have to provide some training and support. But what will that be? How will we do it? Where will we do it? Will it be virtual, physical? And then, you know, DSI wanted to see the new technology for these research infrastructures. And so our project is to look at using DNA barcoding for forensics and for biosecurity. So we have to do barcoding of illegally traded and harvested species, as well as for pests, parasites, and disease vectors. So we've still got a whole lot of project development around that. And then biobanking. So I know that there are freezers with materials, tissue or DNA extracts at many of the institutions. We've got a second big research infrastructure project for biodiversity biobanking. And we need to look at how do the museums and herbaria deal with this. Can we centralize? Where could we? How would we do it? We understand that this is expensive, high technology equipment, and that you need dedicated staff to run these biobanks. So you can see that there's lots of things happening, but within each of those bullet points, there's a whole lot of small actions that have to happen. And there's lots of work that has to be done by a lot of people. And that's the only way we're going to achieve those outputs. And I think next slide. It can be very daunting. I know that the Hub team does often get very overwhelmed by all the work that needs to be done. And we've spoken about this before, how to eat an elephant. And so you have to keep thinking of it in this way. It's one small bite, one step forward at a time. So I think I'm going to hand over to, I can't remember, oh, it's Chanel next. And you'll see all the little bits that have to happen for the NSCF, but we have to keep in mind our big picture aims and objectives still. Thank you. Over to you, Chanel.
Thank you, Michelle. Morning, everyone. I'll be giving an update on the partner institutions' funding, reporting, and staffing. So during the second phase of the project, we signed collaboration agreements with all partner institutions, except Sandy, seeing as they are our host. And just a reminder, the agreements that are signed with the institution set out the funding that we allocate to each institution against milestones, as well as the obligations that they have to the project, such as attending and contributing to the NSCF committee and working group meetings, and contributing to the development of the NSCF Business Plan, and working towards achieving the NSCF targets, as well as providing open access to data and collections. So in this phase, for this year, this financial year, 6.2 million rand was allocated to institutions. And this included funding for items that would enable the institutions to adhere to the standards and processes as set out in the Collections Management Manual, such as temperature and humidity loggers, ethanol concentration meters, glass specimen jars, pest monitoring traps, and also the purchase of plastic lids for specimen jars, which fit the jars better and don't react to the preservative. So far, we've received claims for 3.5 million rand, and this is working against a very tight deadline, with most institutions only signing their agreements in August and having to spend the money by the end of October. We anticipate that the remainder of the funds will be claimed during November, as some institutions had to deal with procurement delays that were out of their hands. Part of the funding was also centralized for a bulk buy of ethanol monitoring tablets. And I'm pleased to let you know that the shipment is on its way to South Africa and is expected to arrive by the end of the week, meaning we can start distributing the tablets to the institutions in the next month. Then moving on to reporting, 15 out of the 16 institutions reported on the online reporting system for the Q2 of the financial year. And as I always mention, reporting on these outputs assists the NSCF Hub to illustrate the extensive use of the collections and why they remain relevant. So the output shown here for the first 2 quarters of the financial year, that's April to September, and those in brackets are for the same period last year. As expected, there was a decline in most indicators due to the national lockdown. And so this chart compares the outputs for April to September 2019 with April to September 2020. As you can see, the one output that did increase was the number of specimens identified. And although the other outputs saw a decrease, we did adjust the targets in the business plan in response to the closure of institutions, which means we will still reach our targets. For example, we've already reached 90% of our target for the number of papers published. They've exceeded the target for the number of species described. Moving on to staff appointments. So as you know, the NSCF appoints staff to work on specific projects in the institutions. These can be 1 to 2 year contract posts or shorter appointments, such as the research assistants who are appointed on 6-month contracts. So we recently appointed 2 research assistants to assist with migration of the ARC databases and the Albany and ESI Paleo databases to specify. We also appointed 4 research assistants at the Bolus Herbarium to assist with imaging and data capture of the priority plant families, and then 2 research assistants at SciHub to assist with incorporation of the Albany fish collection and imaging of type specimens. We are also in the process of appointing a data technician for plants in the post that was recently vacated, and then a data quality specialist for animals. Then, as Michelle has mentioned, we are developing a plan for finding new ways of engaging with institutions and also making the Hub team work more efficient. We are already using Zoom and Slack, which is working quite well. And we are in the process of reviewing our document management system on the Google Drive. And we'll also be looking at whether a task management system will work for the project and the team. Various engagement sessions with institutions are planned, including webinars and tutorials, as well as many task teams to work on implementing the collections management manual. One of the task teams that has already been established and will have its first meeting on 9 November is the team that will be working on the documentation of the value of the research on collections and iconic specimens. So we did send out a call for nominations to be part of the task team, but we welcome more members to join. So if you are interested in joining the team, please give your name to your coordinating committee representative. And then we're planning the next NSCF forum for February or March 2021. This will be a virtual event, so keep an eye on your mailboxes for the invitation. Thank you. That's all from me. I'll give over to Fulu.
Thank you, Chanel. Good morning. I am Fulupelo Gerepe and I'm the Science Communication Officer. So I'll be giving you an update on our communication efforts. Next slide. So I will update you on how the newsletter is doing, as well as our social media, webinars, and the website. So in terms of the newsletter, you will know that, I'm sorry for the background noise, please bear with me. So you will know that it goes out twice a month, and that will be on Fridays. So this chart is just showing you how the newsletters that we've been sending out since May until currently, so recently in September, have been doing. If you look at the blue bar, that is the total number of recipients. So it's the number of people that actually received our newsletters, or they are on our mailing list. The orange bar is showing you how many people, how many mailboxes the newsletter was delivered to. So these are people that have these newsletters in their mailboxes. Not talking about which folder, but in their mailboxes. The gray bar is showing the recipients who opened. And that is one of the most important things that I look at and I'm focused on. it is telling me that of all those people that we sent the newsletter to, that is the number of people that are opening it. So they receive it and click on it and read it. And then the yellow bar is the total opens, so people that see it and open it. And I think it also includes the number of times. So one person can open it more than once. So that's why, as compared to the gray bar, it's higher. And the recipients who clicked is the tiny blue, light blue, and the green is the total clicks. So people that are opening even the links and everything that's included in the newsletter. Now, I am concerned with the latter. So we are looking to have the newsletter being open and read. Now, we also notice and acknowledge that we are faced with a challenge of the spam folders, and we are working on that. We are looking at ways of avoiding those spam folders. And once we've dealt with that, we will also update you and just find out if it's working on your side. So before we have that solved, I will ask you to constantly, especially when it's a week for the newsletter, to just go and check your spam folder to check for the newsletter, and you'll get it there if you don't have it in your mailbox, in your inbox. Next slide. In terms of the social media, on Facebook, we have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. So our Facebook page currently has 269 likes and 279 followers. Please, if you haven't shared it with other people, please do share it and let other people know and see what we are up to in terms of our work, not only as a network, but also as institutions. We post graphics. We try to have pictures and put content that will make someone stop and look at the content. I have circled the orange bar there because that's what I look at most. We're trying to get engagement. When I talk about engagement, I'm talking about you seeing the post and not just passing by, but seeing it and doing something with it. You either like, or you comment, or you share. Currently, you won't be able to share because of the problem with our website. So it has affected our Facebook page, but we're also working on that. But what you can do is like and comment and let people know about the content, do something with the content. That is what we talk about when we say engage or the engagement. You will see the orange bar, which is what I'm looking at most. It's very low. Throughout the month, it's very low. So we need to look at bringing that up.
Data standard, relatively minor tweaks for publication. For the imaging standards, though, we did do quite a lot more work there just to get those standards rounded off for inclusion in the manual. And you know, one of the things that came out of that, which has been quite useful, is that the file naming conventions that we came up with for paleontological specimens, we actually had a discussion with some people from the paleo community, and they said that we should actually publish that as a standard in a paleo journal, because they don't have anything like that. So that was quite a nice outcome of that exercise. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, just carrying on with the imaging stuff, is that we've sort of come up with a plan for how we actually want to manage our images across several different platforms, so that it might be worthwhile for people to keep this in mind. Something called Flickr. People might be familiar with Flickr, but it offers really nice functionality for being able to search through sets of images using keywords, and it lets you uses the titles of images and all kinds of things. It gives you multiple different resolutions of the same image, which you can use in different tools, websites or whatever else. So we're quite excited to get that up and running. Okay, next slide, please, Chanel. I also finalized our georeferencing protocol in the last period. So that was underway when we last did a report back. And some people were saying it should be really small, like so last time when I reported back, the tool, I'd only got to the point of being able to import data sets into the tool. Since then, myself and one of our HERP technicians both of our HERP technicians have built a locality grouping function. So it groups similar localities into groups. And that runs as a cloud function on Google Cloud Platform. It's a Python tool. The fancy thing about it is that it groups thousands of localities literally in seconds. So it's the speed that's really important there. I've also created an Elasticsearch database. So that's going to be the actual georeference database. And we're using that because it basically lets you use similar search functionality for locality strings. So you'll send a locality string to this database and it gets back similar locality strings. Kind of like building a Lego toy kind of thing. And one of those components is on the right-hand side of a particular locality. There's already an existing georeference for that locality for the has been completed, and the contract was closed. The service provider to get these RAs appointed, and Albie Bosman very kindly contributed to developing that. And then the last important thing here is that the hosting platform that SIAB has been hosting up until now for other institutions has moved to the NSCF Hub team. So that basically falls under my responsibility now, and it was a decision taken between basically between SIAB management and NSCF management that hosting platform is more appropriately situated within the NSCF Hub now that the NSCF exists. Next slide, please. In terms of the work that's been going on in the collections, we've got these two herpetology technicians, Adrian and Christian, that have been working through the collections. There's been a lot of work that's needed to be done in the herpetology collections. It seems like it's less so with other vertebrate collections. But they've basically worked through the KwaZulu-Natal Museum herpetology collection. That's about 8,000 specimens where they verified the data on the database and updated identifications. And most of the identifications got updated there. They've also completed work on the McGregor collection. So they received a donation of about, I think it was 6,000 specimens or so from Tony Lamberis, and our guys are just going to work through all of that and integrate it into that collection. And the data capture for that work has been completed already. And then, yeah, we're in the process of appointing these RAs to start working in the Albany fish, working in SIAB to integrate the Albany fish collection there. Next slide, please. On the herbarium side of things, our data capture has slowed down quite dramatically in the last 3 months as a result of the lockdown and people not being able to access the collections and image specimens for us. So our data capture team has basically been working on transcribe records, and they've done about 5,000 records in the last 3 months, which is not great. But like I said, there have been constraints. But we have been continuing with quality control work, focusing on some of the Compton herbarium stuff, and that's been going forward with those records going back into the database there. Something else relevant there is that we've been working on trying to build up a quality control team across the institutions. So basically a team of people that work on quality control for records that get digitized. And you know, it was originally just Bronwyn that was doing this, and who's a member of that team might come in and just do an hour makes for quite a lot of manpower. We've appointed RAs at the Bolus Herbarium, which is a very positive step forward. Things were kind of lagging there because there hadn't been a curator appointed for a long time. Cornelia Clack, who's with us today, is now has been appointed. Then there was an issue with getting an imaging system up and running there, which they've now got. They've now got a very good imaging system in there now. And so again, there was a long delay with appointing these RAs, but we're excited to get the work started there in terms of imaging that collection. And then there's the imaging of the euphorbs and the asters is near complete in Selma Schonland Herbarium, and that will basically complete the imaging for all of the priority NSCF families in that institution, and then we will just be capturing. These are the last 2 families that we have to do data capture for to get that institution up to speed. And then I've also made some updates to the RDE cleaning tool that I built. It now includes functionality that lets you work through all of the collectors and determiners that have been captured in a set of records. So what we're doing is, once we've captured a whole bunch of records, add it to my people table, and that's speeding up the processing of data before it goes back into Brahms quite a lot. Next slide, please. Also important is that in terms of our virtual museum, I attended the Tadwig conference of current NSCF priority taxa, but I think it's going to get out of hand very quickly when we start moving to other taxa, particularly the invertebrates. And at the Tadwig conference, there was a really great session on the Living Atlases platform. So Atlas of Living Australia is one of those. It's a really fantastic tool. So it's basically a one single biodiversity data portal for a country. And so we've made the decision that we're going to go with that instead of Symbiota. It's got all kinds of advantages. It's a modular plugin system, free open source software. But the really important thing is that there's a very active community around the Living Atlases. There are currently 30 portals. I think it's over 30 portals worldwide. And they're very supportive. So there's lots of help with getting one of these portals up and running and keeping it going. The challenge that we have there is that we have to get a service provider that can provide the hosting for us, because Sanby can't host anything that's not a Microsoft platform. So we're in the process of, we'll get a process started to contract a service provider for that. Next slide, please. Just an update on the data management training. So the idea here is that we want to start developing capacity for data management in our institutions. I'm hoping that we'll be able to get started with this early next year, and I'm just finalizing details of the course with the University of Pretoria. It'll be a certificate course that the university offers, running over 6 months, I think we said. So yeah, quite excited to get that up and running. Next slide, please. And this is the last slide, is just to report back on this little exercise that we ran with printing specimen labels for wet specimens using an inkjet printer. I used an Epson EcoTank mono printer for this. The printer costs 2,000 Rand, and it seems to do a pretty good job of printing labels compared to the much more expensive thermal printers that people are using. And so what we did here was printed labels on a whole range of different papers, goatskin parchment, Teslin, the paper that the Song Museum is using, and Ezeko's tracing paper. And we've sent samples of those to several institutions just to kind of keep an eye on and see how they last over time. So it's a bit of a fun experiment just to see how these printed labels work. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ian. I am going to give you the collection management update. Next slide, please. So the collection management has been developing a manual, and I'll take you through the process of developing this manual. The manual fits in with the objective to secure the collection, as it will provide guidance of how to look after the collection. So we held meetings, both regional and national ones, to discuss, debate, and to resolve issues, while some of those issues were simply highlighted and we will continue to address them. The manual doesn't have everything in it, but it is rather a living document that we will evolve as the update, through update as we use it to find out what works and what doesn't, and also to find out what is missing, etc. It will be through every user's input and involvement that it will be received and expanded over the years. So developing this manual was an opportunity for the staff in the NSCF network to share their knowledge and experience and to work collaboratively. It has been an enormous task, but it was one very neat policies and standards and procedures that will make it possible for us while we also. So the policies in the network have high professional. Next slide, please. The manual was developed through an intense process of input and reviewing. The coordinator would draft the documents that were seen and approved by the project lead. Then they will be discussed and reviewed by the working group in a meeting. The working group will then take the document stuff. Then that input will be returned to the coordinator for amendment. Once all the documents have been amended, they were put aside. All those that have been looked by the working group as well as the rest of the institutions. When all the documents were developed, they were then put into chapters according to the activities that they cover. They were once again discussed and reviewed by the working group as chapters. After that had happened, they were once again shared with the people in the institutions. Then their input was taken back to the coordinator. It was amended and then it was sent once more to the network at large for the network's review. For that, chapter teams were formed. It was either according to one's area of expertise or their experience or their interest that people self-selected to form these task teams. The coordinator amended the network input, then the chapters were reviewed by the project lead. They were then sent for review to the coordinating committee. They were then reviewed again by the project lead and the hub team, then sent off to the publications with the SANBI, to the publications department with SANBI. I want to thank and congratulate everyone who contributed in the development of the manual. So amongst other things, what the manual will do for us is that it will guide us in terms of having good understanding of hazards associated with the collections we keep. the risk presented by these hazards, how these can be lessened, and how to deal with any emergency events in our collections. It will also be. So next slide, please. And it is over 320 pages. So the pictures in the slide are depicting some of the chapters in the manual. So the one I have at the top is one on ethics. So I'll share a little bit about the chapters of the manual to give you guys the background. The ethics chapter in the manual is adapted from the ICOM's Code of Ethics for the Natural History Museum, as well as Shamu and Resnick's Responsible Conduct for Research. So besides ethical collecting of collection objects, there are also other ethical issues relating to ownership of collections and to the duties of institution staff for providing access to the collections, also for protection of the collections for future generations, and for use of collection for ethical research. Just in the previous statements, the ethics chapter is already touching on collection access, on collection care and access to collections, which are also two chapters that are covered in the manual. Why the collection care, in order for us to be able to make collections accessible for over a long period of time and to protect them for the generations to come. So the ethics chapter also touches on decolonization and social injustices in the collections, a subject of broad and current interest in the world of natural science collections at the moment. As a matter of fact, the NSCF, the Natural Science Collections Association, will be holding a one-day online conference on the 19th, which is free to those with membership. So I also mentioned collection care, and you will see the jars with the common tablets there. Collection care is one of the long chapters in the manual. It covered a wide range of collection activities, as it covers environmental conditions of collection storage areas. It also covers collection consumables to be used. It also covers collection furniture that should be used. As I say, it is one of the long chapters in the manual. This is because the primary duty of any responsible institution holding natural science collections in its care is the prevention of their physical deterioration. Next slide, please. But the collections have to be used. As I mentioned, it is our ethical responsibility to allow access to those collections. So we will also be handling of a working institution to have balance, and therefore we should establish the balance in the activities involved to carry out those, and have suitable guidelines and procedures in place to have, and then not only just have those, but implement them. So as the chapters continue, there is an image of a accession register or a catalog book in the slide. So if you are an institution and you are holding natural science collections, it is a CITES standard and a requirement for collection institutions to keep an accession register, which will be used to record to record all the entries of collection objects coming into the institutions, and this should. So, I also want to mention that the information that is that the chapters in the manual are based on is coming from international guidelines and standards and procedures developed by global experts in the field of natural science collection and preservation. Some of those are the SPINACH, which is the Society for the Preservation of Natural History Collections, and the NATSCA, which I have mentioned. Also the Institute for the Conservation, which is ICON, and many others. So in this slide, we also have health and safety chapter represented here. I think the purpose of the health and safety chapter is to focus on specific issues related to the health and safety risks to staff and users of the collections. It is also to ensure that staff and visitors to the collection are protected from injury and ill health resulting from their work. And just for any other institution besides us as museums and herbaria, the OHSA, which is the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 1993 and the associated regulations, are a requirement, a legal requirement for institutions, and non-compliant with that can result in institutions being shut down by the Department of Labor. For instance, if there was an injury or death at that institution and the legal requirements have not been met, that institution could be shut. So, as have been mentioned earlier, it is important that institutions conduct risk assessments to identify the hazards and the risk. And when we conduct seeing that the manual development is out of the way, the new role of the working group will be to work on the manual editions as they come. The working group will be needed for the same way they were involved in the development of the manual. They will be needed for decision making. The working group members will also be involved in the implementation of the standards as put out in the manual. They will also be involved in conducting the institution self-assessment in order to comply. This was a suggestion by the working group members that the institutions be given an opportunity to first self-assess themselves. And the one other thing that will change is that there will now be collection management task teams. The new role of the working group was collectively agreed upon by the working group members in the last national meeting held. The task teams were identified based on the collection types that are presented in the working group. So we have CMC Herbaria, which is collection management and conservation for herbaria, and then we have CMC fluid preserved, and we have CMC geological collections covering the fossils, rocks and minerals, and we have CMC dry collections, which covers your skin, bones, insects and skeleton, and then the birds and mammals are combined in one task teams. However, there could be more task teams if they are identified. So the purpose of the task teams is to ensure that objectives relating to collection management and preservation, as well as their implementation, are achieved. Task team representatives will be grouped according to collection types so that the issues or challenges specific to those collections are dealt with. Next slide, please. the self-assessment checklist is a screenshot. I'm not sure if everyone can see that. It's a screenshot from the collective suggestion by the working group to use the status in terms of complying with the manual. So the environmental conditions are the most important for the natural science collections are the temperature, the relative humidity, and of course the light and the exposure to dust or dirt. So if we store natural science collection in storage areas with incorrect environmental conditions, that may result in damaged collection objects. For instance, if we have an incorrect relative humidity, that could cause cracking and delamination, which is when the horn or bone begins to flake away in very thin layers. And too much fluctuations or severe fluctuations will also cause the collection objects to split and break apart. And to have incorrect temperatures will affect specimens in different ways. For instance, in a fluid temperature, fluctuations will accelerate the failure of lids on the containers. Or warm environments can cause the release of residual fats in specimen skins, resulting in hair or feather loss in the specimens. So it is very important that we monitor the temperature and relative humidities in the collection storage areas. And therefore, the manual recommends that data loggers should be placed throughout the collection storage area to record and monitor temperatures and relative humidity on an ongoing basis. And the record should be kept and reviewed regularly in order for us to be able to detect problems and to see changes in the collection environment. In the storage environment. I'd like to thank and congratulate once again everyone who contributed in the development of the manual, and we look forward to continuing this journey together. The team and I are ready now to respond to the questions in the Q&A chat in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. We'll see if Fulu can connect now. I'll just jump to your slide, Fulu.
Yes. Yes, we can move.
Excellent.
So as I was saying, what I look at the most in terms of social media is the engagement, because we want to see that the content that we are putting out, you are receiving, but not only receiving, but you're doing something with it. So when you react, that's your way of showing us. So my message today is basically to tell you to like, comment, and share. And you'll see me repeating these words throughout my presentation. Next slide. So the Facebook group. So I just want to explain also, the Facebook group is for this community. It's for the NSCF community. It's not for people from outside. So this is a platform that we want you to use to engage each other, to discuss issues. Just like we now created also the WhatsApp group, that's for engagement. We're trying to get the community to become an actual community, where it's easy for you to just share information, but not only share, but to also, what words can I use for this? But you know, when you have friends, you find it easy for you to converse with them, and you don't really have to measure what you share with them. So that's the kind of platform we're trying to create. So for this, it's this Facebook group as well as the WhatsApp group. So people that are not on WhatsApp can engage here and vice versa, or do it in both platforms. You will see the comments and the reactions that I highlighted there. That's the numbers that we're looking at. So since April until October, if you look at the comments, they're very low. For a month, let's look at October. For a month, only 4 comments. That just shows that there's nothing happening there. So I will repeat my message. Please like, share, and comment, just to show us that you're saying it, but also you are open to engaging with one another. Next slide. For Instagram, Instagram will only give me the past 7 days of insights or report. But it's the same thing that we're experiencing with all our platforms. There is just not enough engagement. So we are at 102 followers, and the content that we put here is the same content that we put on the Facebook page as well as on Twitter. So if you look at if you look at the top post there, you'll see that each content will have about 5 likes or even 1 like. So that's a problem. I'm sorry to come here and always complain, but until I see something, you just have to bear with me. Next slide. For our Twitter page, we have 99 followers currently. This is a snapshot of the month of October. And the top tweet was the one about the review of freshwater crayfish, which is an item that I shared in the newsletter, and it came from the community. So thank you to those who are sending us their content. It really helps. And you can see that if it's a top tweet, that means that there are people that are finding it interesting. So keep sending those. And the top media tweet was the webinar invite for our permitting webinar, which is the previous one that we had. And in the month of October, you'll see that we gained 3 new followers. So just keep sharing and liking our content, and let's get more people to engage with Natural Science Collection. Next slide. These are the Twitter stats for since April until October. I have again circled engagement because this is the main thing that we are looking at, or that we are looking to grow. During the month of June and July and a bit of August, the numbers were good in terms of engagement, but September and October, they have been going down. So maybe just a reminder to do that, like, comment, and share. This will get our numbers up. Next slide. In our YouTube channel, this was recently started in July, is when we first uploaded our webinar. So it currently has 18 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, please go and subscribe. And whenever you watch our videos or the recordings of our webinars, make sure that you're subscribed, just so that you get notifications of our uploads we're not planning to only upload the webinars, but we're also going to upload other things. So make sure you are already subscribed and press the notification button to get notified of new uploads. So in July, I have just noted that you will see that the numbers are based on when we have uploaded. So when we uploaded the July webinar, which was our first update webinar, the numbers went a bit high. And then this past webinar on permitting was only last week. So the numbers haven't picked up as much, but you'll see that once we upload, the numbers go up, but when it's quiet, the numbers also go down. So remember, subscribe, press the notification button, like, comment, and share. Next slide. The website has been under construction. We had, it was hacked. So our developer has been working on it and the malware has been removed. And we are updating it with the most recent content. And we've also decided to limit admin rights to it. So it will only be me and Jacques, who is our developer. So any updates that have to be done have to go through me from our side, and I will work with Jacques. The WhatsApp group has been created and currently it has 63 participants. So thank you to those who added them, who accepted the invite to be part of it. And we just need you from now to continue sharing it with your colleagues and have them join. And when you join, engage. When there is a post, comment on it, have a remark or whatever, and also whatever is happening in your institution that is interesting that you'd like other people to know about, post it on the group. And yeah, don't worry about being the first one to post in a day or whatever. Just post and we will engage with your content. In terms of webinars, we have scheduled the webinars for the rest of the year and have shared this with the community through the newsletter. The most recent one was on permitting, and it was on the 28th of October. The turnout was great. I have just shared a screenshot there of the first question, which was to scale how the webinar was, and it's good. The results are good. And the next webinar will be on GREP 103. That's the topic, and it will be on the 2nd of December. We will send out the registration details and everything else in due time. I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fulu, and thanks to the other panelists. And thank you for participating in the webinar. I'm aware that we have kept you much longer than we'd hoped. We did have some connectivity problems, and I think that that's something that we have all got used to through the lockdown and through working virtually. So there were some questions that came in the Q&A box, and I think I did answer those. So Ayanda wanted to know about getting the emails through Gmail, the newsletter, and we can do that. If you're having problems with newsletter notifications, or then just let go, and we'll try and use a different address or something like that. And then Benny was asking about the rollout of Brahms 8. And I did PDF manual from Sanby, and he said that there have been problems with that being tied up with Sanby's SEM. Those of you who deal with procurement through government structures know how difficult it is to pay or buy anything. Hoping that it'll be resolved 2 weeks, and then that license will be available to the other institutions. He also asked a question about all the news that comes through to the newsletter and whether we can't get that into newspaper magazines. And I think we must look at that. So we've really been focusing very much up until now on internal communication with the network and between members of the network. And at some point we do have to start looking more broadly and looking outside, communicating to external stakeholders, public. Okay, Renee said that she's not a social media user, are the same. I'm also horrible at it. It's a new world for me. I have, through the lockdown, got quite into Facebook now. I'm very into my WhatsApp groups. And so it's once or twice you do it and then you get more absorbed in it. So it's really just a matter of sticky toes in it quickly and you'll get more into it. So I don't see anything else. Yeah, okay, so that's what Fuller said about sharing stories. All right, so is there anything else from any of the panel members? No. Okay, so then just remains me just to say thanks again. And we will keep engaging through the different platforms and we will be having more meetings and engagements through the working groups and task teams. So there will be lots happening and we hope that you'll engage with those, get involved, participate, and all continue work on this NSCF together. So thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.